Real Enigmas and Theories is back again with another video. This joint smokes like The Walking Dead mixed with 28 Days Later with a splash of Super Mario Brothers and common side effects. With zombies that run like it's a Black Friday sale at the mall when the doors open, to cannibals, military factions, rebel factions. So we're going to talk about how this absurd oyster, portobello button bullshitaki fungal fuckery even got started. So ironically enough, a scientist in the 60s was on a talk show talking about the cordyceps, a real-life fungus that hijacks ants and the possibility of it mutating so that it would be able to withstand the temperature of the human body. The mystical side of body temperature and how the ancient esoteric systems viewed the heat of the body not just as biology, but as a spiritual flame or the fire within. The inner fire in alchemical and hermetic teachings, metaphors like the burning heart or the warm hand of the initiate, to describe someone who has activated their inner spiritual temperature, and that's used in Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism. The Philosopher's Stone was described as something that could maintain the perfect temperature, neither burning nor freezing. It tempered the body and soul, and we'll dive into all of this symbolism as the season progresses, I'm sure, because we've got fireflies, Joel massacring that team of this fungal god, and it mutates to survive in humans. The first outbreak began in 2003 in a flower factory in Jakarta, Indonesia. And that's a city linked to ancient maritime trade routes and deep mythologies. We'll talk some about that throughout the season as well. Origin parts and mirroring are very important to this story. The flower spreads like a cursed Eucharist and humanity consumes the proverbial flesh to its own doom. Sarah and Joel even avoid this unholy Eucharist in the morning when they spoke of where's the pancake mix. Pancakes and waffles have been symbolism in a bunch of shows that I've been watching lately, but we'll talk about those connections later. Cordyceps in The Last of Us isn't just a disease, it's a symbol of natural retribution, a hive mind correcting the sins of modern man. Instead of airborne spores in the first season, the show uses interconnected root systems like a dark version of the world tree or Yggdrasil. The fungal mycelium mirrors the ancient underworld maps like a web beneath the living world. So by looking at the new trailer and seeing them incorporate the spores into this takeover like we see in the different variations of the infected, let me know what you think in the comments. So on the night of the outbreak, Joel is a single father rooted in labor, routine, and care. He's working with his brother Tommy while providing for his daughter Sarah, which is the name of the foundational matriarch in the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Her death is not random, it's brutal, but it's also ritual, a sacred offering that shatters Joel's tether to the world. I've always found it interesting that Joel and Tommy both had a major change almost instantly when the outbreak reached their town. They both had to kill that night. Joel had to kill that old lady to save Sarah, which started the tearing of his mind, and shortly after his daughter was gunned down by someone in uniform ordered to kill the wounded, Tommy comes through and kills that guy, which begins to change his mind that night as well. Joel killed that woman to protect his daughter, and Tommy killed that soldier to avenge his niece and save his brother. I mean, let's be real, the shiitake pretty much hit the fan and everything is up from there. We didn't get to see anything about how the brothers immediately recovered from the loss of Sarah, but we do know that they had some ups and some downs until Tommy ultimately left. So while the show doesn't give an exact date or time period, the most likely scenario is that Tommy joins the Fireflies within the first 5 years post the outbreak, while his brother falls deeper into cynicism and survivalism. And that, along with protecting Ellie, is pretty much Joel's whole driving force for the whole season. Tommy clings to hope and joins the cause, eventually helping to build Jackson, which is like the new arc. Now, at some point around 6 years after the outbreak, a woman named Anna is about to give birth and is running from an infected woman and ends up getting bit just before giving birth and killing the infected with a switchblade. She then uses that same switchblade to cut the umbilical cord of the baby, and that combined with being bitten before she gave birth gave Ellie just enough exposure to survive the actual cordyceps. It may even have something to do with the stem cells that are found inside the placenta and the umbilical cord. Through this process, Ellie becomes the divine womb-born cure, the philosopher's stone of post-apocalyptic alchemy. The switchblade isn't just some slick pocket weapon. It's a cultural archetype, and it's a symbol of rebellion, and quietly one of those items that holds weight way beyond the steel. In esoteric traditions, the blade often represents the will, the word, or the logos, or the ability to cut through illusion, a ritual dagger, if you will. A switchblade specifically implies an intention that is denied until the exact moment that it must be revealed. It's like you push a button and it's magically there. And this switchblade to Ellie is more than just a weapon. It's a relic of inheritance. Passed down from her mother, it carries blood memory, maternal protection, and silent rage. And in Ellie's hands, the blade becomes an extension of her will to survive, but also her connection to the sacred feminine, her mother. Every time Ellie draws it, she invokes the legacy of her birth. Ellie's mother was one of the Fireflies, and she wasn't just a member, she was a trusted member. Her best friend Marlene was the leader of the Fireflies, who actually becomes Ellie's caretaker after Anna dies. And this connection is critical because Anna entrusted Marlene with Ellie's life, knowing that she was dying from the bite, not there to take care of her baby. So Marlene is forced to make an impossible choice to kill her best friend to prevent the infection and then raise a child that was born in that blood. This bond ties Ellie to the Fireflies not by choice, but by inheritance. She's like a prophesized cure, not because of belief, but because of blood, literally. Ellie's connection to the Fireflies is mythically loaded. She's their Messiah child, passed down from a dying priestess to a reluctant guardian. After killing Anna to prevent the infection from spreading, Marlene is left holding a newborn child. But rather than raise Ellie within the Fireflies, Marlene hands her over to Fedra's, and she's raised in a military-run orphanage in the Boston quarantine zone. On a symbolic level, it's a betrayal masked as protection. Ellie is given to the very system the Fireflies oppose, raised by the iron hand of the regime that controls through fear and ration cards. She grows up inside the machine, but that divine spark inside of her remains untouched, and her rebellion doesn't start in the Firefly camp, it starts in a prison, making her eventual escape a true mythic resurrection. So, back to Joel. 14 years after Ellie's birth, Joel is now a cold and emotion-burned smuggler, and he actually lives in that Boston quarantine zone ruled by Fedra. Fedra symbolizes order through authoritarian fear, similar to Set in the Egyptian mythology. Joel has found a companion in Tess, and they met, bonded, during the darkest years after the collapse. Their relationship was forged in violence, bartering, blood, and this new apocalyptic underworld. Tess is the one who trusted Joel with her life, and likely vice versa. I call them cuddling smugglers. Joel's new mission is to find his brother Tommy in Wyoming. Tess and Joel bump into Marlene and agree to smuggle Ellie for the Fireflies in exchange for a car battery so Joel can go find his brother. Tess becomes the sacred witness and martyr, giving her life for the possibility of Ellie's salvation. And before Tess and Joel even make it out of Boston, they meet the first twisted saints of the funky fungal pantheon, runners and clickers. Runners are newly damned and still human enough to scream like Pastor Kearney Thomas.
You know, I'm ready for God to work the miracle.
It can be an deliberate attack on the human species, provoked by humans' destructive nature. Now, these are like the priests of infection, only answering to the hive mind god underground. The clicker's echolocation is a form of dark tongues, in a language that's given back to nature, but it's kind of twisted. In Tess, she doesn't even make it to see a bloater, but her death definitely sets the tone for what they'll be walking into. Bitten and cornered, she's choosing to die in a fire standing between the infected and the cure like a living altar. I mean, homegirl went out bad. Having to kiss the zombie version of Balky from Perfect Strangers is crazy. The bloaters who appear later in Kansas City are the fungal titans. They're slow, silent, and built like a Chicago-style pizza took a shit. They're what happens when death takes its time, decay, and turn divine. And if the clickers are the priests, the bloaters are the judgment of rot made into flesh. And Joel and Ellie are not just dodging zombies. They're trespassing through a mythic underworld where every infected is another form of godhood, corrupt, violent, and holy. This world has become the chapel of the cordyceps. Now, to get Ellie to the Fireflies, Joel needs a car, and for that, they head to Bill and Frank's compound. And it's not just a pit stop, it's a mythic crossroads. Bill built a hidden Eden behind electric fences and tape wires, and a shitload of booby traps. When the world gave in to chaos, Bill chose to cherish food, clothing, shelter, to devotion, and a togetherness that aged like wine, while the rest of the world rotted. And in that silence, Joel finds what he needs, not just supplies, but a reminder that anything can still be built from nothing. Tess knew Bill, not well, not sweetly, but with that rough respect that they only could even understand each other being survivors. They traded, they talked, and they tolerated each other. Frank was who was in protect the one person who matters. It's like a divine message from the gruff protector to another gruff protector. You dig? So Joel takes the truck, the guns, some other supplies, and they keep on moving. So they make it to Kansas City, and it isn't just a setting. It's a ruined temple of failed revolution and a Wizard of Oz reference that has been showing up in every show that I've watched since 2020. Fedra ruled that city with cruelty, torturing civilians and turning neighborhoods into prison blocks. But when the people rose up, led by Kathleen, they overthrew the oppressors and became the new tyrants themselves. It's that French Revolution curse, the liberators becoming the executioners. Kathleen, driven by grief over her brother's death, wages war on not just Fedra, she seeks emotional retribution as well. And her holy war has one target, and that's Henry. He turned Kathleen's brother into Fedra in exchange for some medicine to save his little brother Sam's life. He made a brutal moral trade to protect his brother, just like Joel will do later for Ellie. Joel and Henry are the protectors, and Ellie and Sam are the protected. Ellie will also have to get medicine for Joel as Henry had to get medicine for Sam. So the four of them descend into the city's underworld and abandoned tunnels filled with the ghost of a failed dream and a literal fungal death. Because in that descent, they find a forgotten schoolroom with murals and toys left behind, a collapsed utopia built by people trying to shelter children underground, a second Eden, just like Bill and Frank's abandoned compound. Or you can look at it like a labyrinth of reflection, warning, and foreshadowing. Because once they emerge, Kathleen corners them with an entire rebel force. And just as she prepares to execute them, the earth literally opens up. An infected horde pours out of it like one of the craziest scenes that I've ever watched. You had runners, clickers, and a bloater rushing out like the Kansas City Spores. And the bloater is the god of rot, the consequence of everything that Fedra buried and Kathleen ignored. And in that chaos, Kathleen is killed by a child clicker, the very innocence that she sought herself to destroy. That night in the aftermath, Sam reveals his bite to Ellie, and she tries to heal him. She cuts her hand and presses her blood against his wound, which is symbolic of a blood brother ritual like we've seen in shows like Doom Prophecy and From. But it's still not enough, because Sam turns, Henry kills him, and then he turns the gun on himself. Henry's a prophet undone by grief. And at the burial, Ellie leaves Sam's drawing and she says, "I'm sorry," a line that echoes louder than any scream on this entire show. I love that episode. But Ellie doesn't look back at all, and she tells Joel, "Let's go." But something dies inside of her right there. And I can't say it enough. That episode for me was my favorite episode of season 1. Finding the school, working together, even Joel going to get the guy that was sniping at him from afar. Then you had all of those infected coming out of that hole in the ground. And that woman, she wouldn't even listen to her first in command that was working with her about telling the people about the underground threat. She was just so focused on getting Henry. That episode right there was jam-packed with action and everything. And the ending was just so sad. But moving right along, the next time we see them, they're deep in the snow-covered mountains, and Joel and Ellie come across an indigenous couple living peacefully far from the wars of men. Now, these two represent the wisdom of the old world. They don't know a damn thing about the Fireflies or Fedra or anything but enduring, which they had been doing since before all of the bullshitaki started. It's definitely a tonal shift after the trauma of Kansas City. We enter a quiet space where humor and a little bit of calm returns. The mountain is symbolic of the high point after the valley of death, and the couple represent the ancient stewards who never needed to conquer or rebuild. They just mastered the art of not getting involved.
Hide. Came here before you were born, Sonny. Get the hell away from everybody.
I didn't want to.
What about the fireflies?
We get those in the summer.
Not the bugs, the people.
There are firefly people?
Now, before Joel ever sees Jackson, he meets its guardians, a patrol squad on horseback moving like the shadows through the snow. It's not a warm welcome either. They're surrounded with weapons drawn, and a sniff test from a dog becomes the moment of pure terror. The dog is trained to detect bullshitaki, so it snarls at Joel, and then it walks towards Ellie, who on paper should be bitten, but the dog accepts her. And for me, this moment was like a spiritual checkpoint. They've been walking through death and betrayal, and now they face a test of instinct over logic, and Ellie passes it. And that's when the big reveal drops. One of the riders is Maria, Tommy's wife. Names are spoken, and the tension melts into recognition. Joel is taken in as a brother reclaimed, and they ride through the gates of Jackson as pilgrims arriving at the temple. The infected can't breach these walls, nor can the broken systems of Fedra or the ideology of the Fireflies. Jackson is the mythic third path, a society built on cooperation and trust. And Joel seeing his brother again and what the people of Jackson have accomplished made him want to leave Ellie in the care of Tommy, because this is where he really begins to care for Ellie and not just what she represents. This is where he began to view her as more than a cure for mankind. Ellie began to grow like a spore onto Joel's heart, which later led him to run through that Firefly team and doctors like he was infected, taking out everyone in sight. He didn't know it yet, but after he realized it, he chose to lie to Ellie. But Joel and Ellie don't leave Jackson in a blaze of drama. They slip away like ghosts. Joel, now recommitted, decides that he'll take Ellie the rest of the way himself. And it's a monumental choice. He's no longer delivering cargo. He's carrying a sacred relic that matters more than his own life. Their destination is the University of Eastern Colorado, where the Fireflies were supposed to be operating a medical lab. But what they find is an abandoned lab that's filled with traces of someone who was once devoted to the cure. Monkeys, once test subjects, now roam free, which is a weird symbol of innocence returned to chaos and another pesky Wizard of Oz reference. The Fireflies are gone, but the ghosts remain. And then come the Raiders that are led by David. Though we don't know it yet, on the surface, they're just another threat. But under the surface, there's something darker, a cannibalistic cult wearing the skin of community. Now, during the attack, Joel fights one of them off, killing him. But in the struggle, he gets impaled on a piece of wood and he collapses, and the protector is struck down. And now Ellie must rise. So she gets him to safety, and starving and desperate, she hunts and kills a deer, a classic symbol of purity, provision, and the divine favor. She's finally becoming the provider, but the meat doesn't go to Joel. Instead, it becomes currency traded to David's people in exchange for antibiotics. She doesn't know it yet, but they eat human flesh. And that sacred deer is handed over to the wolves in shepherd's clothing. But in return, she's given the means to become an actual healer. This is the inversion of the Eucharist. Instead of receiving the sacred flesh to heal the soul, Ellie unknowingly gives the sacred flesh to people who consume the flesh of man. And still, she takes the medicine and brings it back to Joel, and she's able to administer enough that actually heals him. And this is the ill turning point, because Ellie becomes both Artemis the hunter and Asclepius the healer, the protector reborn in the child's body. The girl who needed saving is now dragging the mythic hero back to life with the fire in her eyes and the rifle in her hand. And David's not done. He sees Ellie's strength and wants to claim it, not just physically, but spiritually. He's the Antichrist in a flannel jacket. So their paths are set to collide, and when they do, it won't be with mercy. It'll be with fire and a steak knife. His group is a false church. He quotes scriptures, but he eats flesh and preys on those who he thinks is weak. Ellie kills him brutally, reclaiming her power from him, and Joel finds her just after that whole situation happens. And that blaze that she caused is a representation of her carrying the fire and unleashing it to reconnect herself with her true purpose. The fire and light bearer symbolism is everywhere. So we get to a point where the Fireflies capture Joel and Ellie is prepped for a surgery that will kill her, but it might save humanity. And Marlene is like the high priestess, and she insists that it's the only way. And Joel, who has been infected by his feelings for Ellie, chooses love over salvation. He slaughters all of them. This isn't just a rescue, it's a Promethean revolt against the divine logic and the greater good. And like I said, his care for Ellie now is like an infection that forced him to run through that whole team like it was nothing. So he tells Ellie that